Oh my gosh. Okay. Hello, everybody. Get yourselves settled for the last talk. Really, the last talk of our 2 days of mind-blowing presentations. So fun. This has been amazing. And this is going to be a really cool talk. This is Emilie Baltz. She's an immersive experience director and artist who explores how the human senses work together to craft perception and meaning. Best known for her delightful innovation work in multi-sensory design, she is interested in using creativity to reconnect self and society to the wonders of the human body. Let's welcome Emilie Baltz. Have fun.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am going to be wielding water and tea and this amazing voice because I have a 5-year-old, and so I have caught every possible germ on the planet. But I'm not contagious. So hi, I'm so honored to close out FITC. This is one of my favorite conferences ever. I always come away just deeply impressed with the organization that goes on behind the scenes, as well as all of the incredible people. So thank you for having me here. Today, I wanted to share with you a project that I worked on for the last 2 years. It took me through the pandemic. And it focuses on this concept of embodiment in immersive experience design. And it specifically will take us through a little story about the making of a spa for the senses. So as you heard, I am interested in exploring how the senses reconnect us to our body, to each other, to a sense of a greater whole. I also have had 22 different haircuts over the last 10 years, this one being one of the more country western ones, I think. I've worked as a wedding photographer, a photo editor. I once restored a medieval chateau with Winston Churchill's great-grandson in 2001. I opened 5 bars and restaurants in New York City. I have a master's in industrial design, a bachelor's in screenwriting and contemporary dance. And I work today as a creative director, experiential artist, and I'm also very proud to be a mother, a friend, a worker, and I'm also very, very happy to be alive here today. Yes. Now, over the past 15 years or so, my work has explored specifically how the 5 senses could be used as a medium for creating new human experiences. I got known for inventing a lickable ice cream orchestra that's pictured here, a cotton candy theremin. I've made dinner in Jimmy Choo's stilettos, and even a multisensory organ that plays the entire spectrum of human feeling from happiness to disgust. Now, all of that has been incredible delight and great fun. And I love to think of our 5 senses fundamentally as our human technology. And I like to play therein with the senses as my own toolkit for design to really start to think about how we might reprogram and redesign new meaning and new perception in our lives. Just like we use color and form and motion and space to create different experiences for humanity, we can also use the very toolkit that we have with which we enter into the world. Because when we experience the world, we don't just see it, we hear it, we feel it, we smell it, we touch it. So as an expansion of our design toolkit, the senses are incredibly ripe for all sorts of creativity and have led to a lot of wonderful, wild, and sometimes very gooey adventures in my career, which unfortunately abruptly stopped in 2020. And I think for many of us, this was really a pivotal moment in all of our careers and in the world as our collective reality really radically changed because of COVID-19. And I personally lost all work. Nobody wanted to eat together, much less lick together. And hell, nobody wanted to smell together, okay? And so I had to flee New York City. Within 48 hours, I left with my husband at the time and my child, and we lived with my mother outside of Chicago for 6 months, wondering what would happen. And that was a case of great privilege to have somewhere to go and somewhere safe to go. But I think we all experience this question of what would happen in the world. I spent more time on this device, more and more and more, and started to wonder more and more and more if technology here was really in service or in sabotage of the human experience. As Zoom meetings, phone calls, FaceTime just grew and grew and grew. And at the end of 2020, we made the decision to move our family to Montreal for 2 years. Now I'm relocated back in New York City. And therein experienced extreme isolation for 8 months. We were not really allowed to go outside. And I am one of those people who need people, like desperately. And that was more and more revealed over the course of the pandemic. And I suddenly personally felt for the first time, I would say, truly alone. And I started to wonder, again, would we ever reconnect to ourselves beyond this screen, just the visual information that was in front of all of us every day? And as I was asking myself these questions, life happened, as sometimes it does. You know, in the pit of despair, the clouds break and a little light comes through. And I got an email from a man named Brendan McGettrick, who was the creative director at the Museum of the Future in Dubai, asking me to pitch on an immersive experience for the 3rd floor of the Museum of the Future in Dubai. And that experience was to explore how technology might be used to reconnect us to our bodies 50 years into the future. So like, what a gift. Who gets a speculative design project, dumped into their lap? It was not dumped. I had to work very hard and went through 2 rounds of pitching on it. And the mission of this experience, he shared with me, was to be an antidote to our dystopian digital futures, a little Black Mirror. These worlds where screens, where technology, where speed, all of the narratives that we've experienced classically through futurism, and we've imagined since the days of like Metropolis and Blade Runner and even beyond that. In these worlds, optimization is key, right? Efficiency is everything. Capitalism reigns. Faster is better. Was there another way? And I will call out that all of these kinds of science fictions or speculative fictions are really built also around a male gaze, outside of body, but it is efficiency, speed, optimization, capitalism, again and again and again and again. And we were in the midst of living it. And to be perfectly frank, I sat within that question of what could be an antidote. And I started to ask myself, was there another point of view? How might I see the world? How might others see the world in the future? And beyond science fiction, was there something within, let's call it a female gaze for now, that we might be able to tell a different story, a story that had a different point of entry into how we think about evolving our futures? And in speculative design, we traditionally do not tell these stories. And so it became a bit of a mission for me to see if there was an opportunity within this space, with all of the world's stage opening up to it, to not just tell this story, but actually open it up to experience it and celebrate it. And so I started to explore all the other ways throughout time that we've tried to make sense of our world as people. Looking at experiences in which the human body is centered as a medium for creating meaning and connection, throughout time and place, from spaces like gymnasiums and hammams that were meant not just for exercise and rejuvenation, but also spaces where communities would come together to witness the evolution of other people's bodies, to understand what it might mean to age, to live as a young person and an old person. Tantric philosophies, where bodies here are centered as pleasure machines to create new forms of intimacy or deeper ties and relationships between people. Modern dance, I come from that. I trained as a Martha Graham dancer, and really have a deep connection to storytelling through movement, through shape, through collaboration of bodies. Sneak peek there, my mom also was a Montessori teacher, which is founded in the idea that we learn through of our senses, that experiential learning, full-bodied, from not just seeing something and memorizing something, but experiencing it, is one of the most profound ways that we can learn as individuals. All the way to today's scientific discovery in neuroscience, where we now know and understand that by creating cross-modal interactions, a sound associated with a new kind of smell can start to reprogram our neural pathways, creating a more malleable, more plastic brain that is open to possibilities and can even restore us from certain traumas. And applications of that found, and if you've ever seen them, snooze-along rooms, if you haven't, like, Google them now, they're incredible, right? There are these beautiful multisensory interaction rooms which are designed for everything from autistic individuals to the elderly to start to rehabilitate them and create new relationships in their senses which might be lost. I was also inspired visually by these kind of Platonic geometries, these timeless forms, a palette of skin tones, things that seem to be not necessarily of a specific era or time and place, but represented kind of a purity of the moment where we started to build spaces for ourselves and our experiences. And from that started to evolve, these classic architectures like Roman architectures, Roman gymnasiums, baths, hammams, all of these spaces that, again, were meant to be spaces of collective care. And from that research, this idea was born. I came up with this idea of what if we could create a space of care? What if one of our future narratives was not about making our bodies faster, better through technology, but that technology could actually help restore our connection to ourselves, to each other, and to a sense of a greater whole? And what better experiential typology than a spa? And so Al-Waha was born. Al-Waha means oasis in Arabic, and it's imagined as a spa for the senses. It's an environment that's uniquely designed to reconnect humanity to its body through a series of 5 different interactive spaces. Fully functional, fully immersive. This is a quote-unquote real spa that you go to on the 3rd floor of the Museum of the Future. And when you enter into it, you experience technology in a completely new way that is meant to be this antidote to the potentially destructive habits of a future digital life. The approach was softly, I like to say softly provocative. Here, this space was meant to be a celebration of human technology, of our senses, not of the machines and the blips and the blinks all around us or the clicks and the swipe, but us. There were to be no screens in this space. There are no buttons, and there are no phones allowed, which is terrible PR for me, but hey, what a stance to say. Philosophically, one of the ideas here was that this space was founded on a principle that all change must come from within. That if we are to change as a society, as a species, we must find something within us that moves us. And so this spa starts to tread more in the emotional than the factual, and you'll see how that comes to life. And in that philosophy, all of the experiences are centered around the human body as a vehicle for transformation, and delivering there an experience of interconnection that starts to imagine our future of well-being, not as an individualistic sport that I get to be stronger and faster than you, but really as an ecology of well-being, an ecology that embraces the physical well-being, social well-being, and spiritual ecology. So practically speaking, 4 experiences were designed. This is about a 3,000 square foot space. There's a little floor plan there on the upper left-hand side of your screen. If you've seen the Museum of the Future, it's like an elliptical-shaped donut, and on the fat side is the building, so you go up and down within that. This is on the 3rd floor, and so you'll see we have this kind of oblong hemisphere here, where this space is designed around a central feature, which is called move. So borrowing from original hammams, Roman gymnasiums that are all built around these central water features like pools or fountains, this space takes that same conceptual approach. And then around it, kind of flanked almost like a cloister walkway, you have 3 different treatment rooms that each address one fundamental thing that might be worthy of future attention. How do we create treatments for feeling? How do we start to create treatments to connect to each other? And how do we also ground in ourselves and create new relationships to our world, to each other, and to those around us? Now, furthering the experience, all of these have a bespoke sound design in them. You'll see the incredible architecture that came out of it. Each space is also uniquely scented. I am unfortunately not able to bring you smell-o-vision today. We're still in 2023, but I was able to work with the Netherlands-based company Centronics, who has a property called algorithmic perfumery. And so we were able to rapid prototype all sorts of different emotions through scent. And so I'll talk about those scents and how they influence the guest experience, because each of the different spaces also has a unique scent that was designed for it. You start the experience in the lobby of the Museum of the Future, and then you take one of these spectacular elevators, or you can walk all the way up to the 5th floor and experience 2 immersive floors, the top one being an experience of going to space as humanity about 50 years into the future, the 4th floor being a floor about climate change that Barney and Marshmallow Laser feasted along with Superflux and certain measures. And then the 3rd floor is myself, along with an entire team of production that I'll call out shortly. So there's a main entrance when you enter into the 3rd floor, which greets you with this central vapor fountain, which you see there situated in the middle. And that leads us down into a main corridor. And this central vapor fountain is a really soft, kind of cloud-like experience. It's scented uniquely with something that is reminiscent of karak tea, which is quite cultural for the Middle East. It's a tea made of cardamom and saffron, and it creates immediately this atmosphere of warmth and humanity. And that was a bold decision on our part, which was when typically you walk into a spa, you have smells of like eucalyptus, or maybe in the Middle East like an oud to make it feel really like rich and sacred. What if we were to think through the lens of hospitality? What if it was an invitation? What if it had kind of memories of home, of moments of sharing tea with each other? All of those kind of cues really help set the stage for the tenets and the philosophy that this experience hopes to deliver. We walk through the space here, going from this central fountain, and you'll see you're able to step in and start to slowly cleanse your hands. So you have this beautiful tactile feeling of kind of putting your hands inside of a cloud, and you pick up some of that smell on you as well. And then you walk down this corridor, and in these 3 alcoves, you're greeted by an avatar that starts to tell you about the experiences that are within the spa. I think I just lost the video, though. Do you see it? No, okay. When you leave that space, you're introduced to each of the treatment rooms of the spa, and you're asked also to put your phone away by this avatar. So there's sort of a 3-step exposition process. And then you're delivered into the spa itself, where you encounter this central feature, which is called Move. This space is a semicircle, and the floor is double padded carpet. So the second that you walk down on it, you have this feeling of real softness. You kind of sink into the floor. And the floor itself has this projection mapped particle system that's generative in real time and responds to your movements, kind of creating this illusion of walking through something that might be like an ocean of sand, or maybe even an ocean of air. The sound, which you can hear, I think, a little bit here, has this kind of white noise particle system feeling to it. And so you're bathed in softness. The whole thing has this and there's a large-scale mirror on one side, so there's a real invitation to dance, to move within the space and with each other. And that sound design also serves very practically as the noise floor for the entire experience, because each of the treatment rooms also has their own sound design to it. The first treatment room that you encounter right off of that central feature is called Feel Therapy. Now, this was designed in response to this, and also the notion, which is one of Montessori's principles, that the hand is the instrument of the mind. And so as we go into these futures, and even in our presence, more and more and more here, more and more and more here, what does that mean for our mind? What does that mean for the sensitivity of the very thing that we first encounter the world with, from handshakes to hugs to caresses? How might the sensitivity of our hands potentially affect the sensitivity of our mind? These again are questions, not answers. And so we came up with this idea of what if there was a treatment that was designed to restore sensitivity, restore feeling to the hand, in the hope of also restoring a certain sensitivity and feeling to the mind. And so we ended up using ultra haptics, 8 boards across 8 different stations in this section. And if you haven't used ultra haptics, they're a board of ultrasonic sensors that, due to their co-location, can be programmed to deliver an invisible shape that you can touch and feel in midair. They hope to be the future of touchless interfaces. And so we were able, across the pandemic, and I also just want to caveat this, that this entire project was designed remotely. I, at the time, was living in Montreal. Deep Local did all of the tangible design and production in Pittsburgh. Sound design was done in Los Angeles, and the client was in Dubai. And there, except for that projection floor, there are, as you see, there are no screens. This is not like a visual content project. And so we had to develop new methods to work, to prototype. And so we designed a unique touch designer patch that allowed us to choreograph sensation, sound, and lighting design all together. And so we swapped scores around the world as we started to develop what we called a tactile meditation. And the form that started to emerge was this idea, this kind of like original Dune-esque, Love me a David Lynch reference, but where you sit within a station and your hands hover ever so slightly over this domed mesh. And through a VO, you're asked to notice the different changing sensations under your hands. And you'll see that this is an individual treatment. You step into these individual booths, and for about 2 minutes, you succumb to sensation. And there's a binaural audio playing that again starts to play with neurological input, with the idea of resensitizing ourselves, opening ourselves to the possibilities of touch, of feeling, of moments, and of presence. Next to that is a treatment called Ground, which is also an antidote to digital futures and to the notion that as our infrastructures become more and more intelligent, that as our cities become more urban, faster, stronger, our electromagnetic field suffers due to all of the digital infrastructure around us. And we may need, in fact, we do need to reground in ourselves and reconnect to our earth. And this one looks backwards in order to go forwards, looking at timeless traditions of sound baths, large-scale gongs. We developed this treatment, which is 2 large-scale gongs here that you stand between. And in standing between those 2 gongs, the gongs are excited actually invisibly. So there are 2 subwoofers behind each of these gongs that send out 88 hertz of sub-bass. And very, very slowly, you'll hear it shortly, they start just through sound vibrations. They start to excite the gong. So sound waves are moving these gongs. Nothing touches them. There is no actuator ever. And you stand between them, and the gong vibrations are centered directly at your heart. You come around this small corner, which is intentionally made to be quite dark and kind of somber. The scent design in this space is based off of oud, so one of the more typical scents in the Middle East, but with some sort of metallic edges to it. And as you stand between it, the gongs start to vibrate, and you start to recenter, quite literally, as these vibrations hit you directly in the center of your body. Now, the last treatment in the spa is dedicated to connection, a little bit of what I introduced, this problematic with. And in the face not only of pandemic isolation, but also the question of individualism, communication via devices, all the things that in some ways connect us also isolate us. This therapy is specifically designed to explore how we might start to visualize and also experience the kind of constellations that form between people. And it's specifically designed to function around this elliptical table, and you'll see there's different lit icons. Inside of those are hidden tiny microphones. And guests are asked to sit down around this, let's call it digital campfire, for lack of a better word, with this enigmatic floating object in the middle. and hum. Humming, I don't know if you know that, releases all sorts of endorphins with you, also starts to directly affect your vagus nerve, which is one of the centers of our health and well-being in our bodies. And as you hum, a small star is triggered and moves forward across this little galactic landscape, similar to my outfit. And if we all get to the center, a constellation appears, and a mini show, I call it the healing powers of togetherness, is released. And we see the universe explode. We are bathed in light, we are bathed in sound, and we are also bathed in scent, because hidden in that railing is an entire scent diffusion system which releases this sort of ethereal, otherworldly mineral scent, taking us for a moment out of ourselves, out of our present, and reminding us that there is a greater whole when we are connected. Throughout this project, I was really inspired by this notion, outside of religion or spirituality, but the notion of that if we are to have peace, it is because, if we have no peace, it is because we may have forgotten that we belong to each other. And these are topics that we talk about ad nauseum now, right? In social media, on the news, in social activism. How do we start to create not just conversations around belonging, but experiences around belonging? And I think one of the great opportunities that we all have as we now look at digital futures expanding, beyond this stuff, right, and going into this, is that we also have the power to unlock immersive experiences and deeply profound multisensory storytelling. Because if we receive information through all of our senses, it quite literally gets coded into our bodies, and that gets coded into our mind. And so I like to remember this, that the stories that we tell really are the stories that we live. It's not a new idea. Since the dawn of time, we've made myths, right? From Greek agoras, where we sat around and told stories individually, to theatrical settings, to mythologies handed down within families. But we also must remember the second part, that the stories that we feel are the people that we become. And in that light, when we think through all of the opportunities that we have within multisensory storytelling, within immersive experiences, we as designers, as artists, as creators, have an incredible opportunity to not just tell stories, but also really create feelings. And I think all of us, whether we like it or not, know that usually how we behave is based on how we feel. And so if we start to shift that line as designers and start to look at our work through the lens also of emotion and of feeling, what might come next for our futures? Within that future, I also really want to call out the incredible ecology that went into making this work. I had the great opportunity to work alongside, as I said, Brendan McGetrick, who is the curator and the creative director at the Museum of the Future. I was able to develop the original content, the creative direction, and saw this all the way through into production and installation in Dubai. I could never, ever, ever have done this without other people. And I think that's one of the most important things also that I want to call out, is that all of us stand up here on the stage and have an amazing privilege to be able to tell our little stories, right? But it's impossible to do it alone. For all of our futures, it's impossible to do it alone. And so who authors this is all of us. That's important for me to say. From Polytope Agency, based in Los Angeles, they are audio sonographers and experienced designers. And one of my great friends, Micah Silver, who I met on an airplane in the year 2004, runs it. I just want to call that out as more serendipity. Scent design, as I said, from Scenttronics. Atelier Bruckner did all of the incredible interior design and architecture, and also spearheaded the incredible task of managing all of the artists and subcontractors in the entire space. So if I could cheer 15 years consistently for them, I would, and so should you. Deep Local in Pittsburgh developed all of the technology and the tangible design. And we were able to work with Clear Story, also based in Pittsburgh, to do interactive lighting design, as well as the incredibly talented visual artist, Alec Guevara, who's Berlin-based, who did all of our generative visual design and programming for the Central Move feature. And then there are 3 other people to call out, which I think often get lost in all of our thanks. And these are the people that were behind the scenes of all of it. My ex-husband, Devin Young, who supported me through countless anxieties and questions and told me to do it, quite frankly. My mother, Emilie Baltz, who did childcare as this opportunity came in when we were living with her in Joliet, Illinois, outside of Chicago, and took care of my son 4 hours a day as I developed pitches and treatments, quite honestly, quite hopelessly in face of what would happen to all of us. And last but not least, my son, Lucian Lightning Young Baltz, and this is the moment where I may tear up, and anybody who has a child may also tear up. But he is 5, he was 3 then. And is really, was named, as you see, over sources of light, but continues to be a guiding light for me, for my work, and also for the incredible task, I think, of toiling against the comfort of giving up. And so I would invite you to all do the same, and also thank you profoundly for this opportunity and for all of your creativity and all of the inspiration that goes into these incredible 2 days. Thank you.
Like to do a little Q&A?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, take the far seat, I'll take the closer one. We've got one question in from the audience. Remember, you can get those in fitc.ca/questions. Wow, this is a kind of a fitting end, I think, because I like this antidote for the future. That was the phrase, right?
Yeah.
I want to come back to that.
Okay.
First, somebody asked, I think this came from online, while you were designing for 50 years, or was it 51?
It was 51,
Why
now
51?
it's 50.
What's the deal? Oh, because was it arbitrary that they chose this number?
No, I believe, and I'm going to totally misquote this, but it's an anniversary of the UAE.
Okay, so
51
it
years.
had significance for the, okay.
It had cultural significance.
Okay.
Yeah.
While you were designing for 50 years in the future, how did you validate that you were meeting the futuristic goal kind of in the present? Were you concerned about that? And how did you kind of, I guess, check in with that?
Yeah. Again, I'll go back to Brendan McGettrick, who is just one of the most rigorous creatives I've ever met, who had this incredible job of being our shepherd and guardrail along the whole way. And so, this entire project was based around futurist workshops and involved a lot of futurists, even before I was given the brief. So he was really a steward in always kind of counter-checking and asking, and a lot of dialogue went into this. Every single day I spoke with him. Every single day we pressure tested the ideas and the concepts. I think it's also worthwhile to say that there might also be no way to know, right? Speculative futures are fiction.
Yeah.
So this is a story. This is not necessarily based in science. It's based on a speculation that 50 years from now, this might even be a little bit, in the past by then, right? At the rate of AI and everything else that we see going on.
Right. Okay, so that's a good segue to get back to this antidote for the future thing. It seems, I guess we can chart that the rate of change, technological progress, is exponential, and so, you set things up with this kind of isolation that you were experiencing during COVID. What is your primary concern as we rocket into the future? What is your primary concern about us kind of socially, culturally, and what is it that needs an antidote? Can you kind of put a finer point on that? What is the poison or the sickness that we need, an antidote for?
Yeah, I'm worried about our intentions. I'll use this metaphor. When I learned to draw perspective way back when, you start at a certain point, then you take your ruler, and from that point you go to the horizon line, right? And then you draw to your horizon line. And you can start, at one point. If you shift, or you can start from one point and draw a line. If you shift the beginning point ever so slightly over, you end up in a radically different part of the horizon, right? And so I'm interested in the stories that we tell now. This is a story of the future. But all the seeds that we plant today are the things that will shift our perspective point, right? And so might we end up somewhere slightly different? And as I said in this presentation, all of our future narratives, specifically in design, are optimization narratives, Like, let's look at the futurists from the dawn of the last industrial revolution. Is that what we want? Is that our intention?
Right.
And I think now these are pivotal points because technology is growing at an exponential speed, and the people who are making those decisions and the people who are then executing on those decisions, can we tell new stories? Can we shift our point of intention and end up maybe just, we think we're just to the left of it now, but did that mean that we end up in a radically new place? Those are questions. Again, they're not answers, but those are things that I think about.
Okay, yeah. Along those same lines, I suppose, is part of the appeal, or at least the marketing messaging, around some of these new emerging technologies that are seeming to kind of hit inflection points like mixed reality and AR, is that you see it's going to get us away from our screens. We're going to be just like this, Yeah, I'll have a layer of data and things on top of all. So the promise is that it's pulling you back to meat space, right? And it's going to be social. Do you buy that?
Do you?
Not really. I feel like it's going to be wildly distracting. I'm not sure. It may just be a different form of isolation, but I don't know if you agree.
Yeah. I don't know if I would necessarily call it isolation, but I think that it's distracting.
Yeah.
One of the most uncomfortable things is being with yourself, I think. And that's why isolation is hard. It's also why I think it can be so enriching. And then it's also, I'm really interested in awkward feelings. The lickable ice cream orchestra is one of the worst things ever. Nobody really wants to do that in public.
Yeah.
But you go and you do it, and you experience risk, and you experience a part of yourself, and you grow. And so I think that's, could AR, could extended mixed realities deliver on those feelings where we confront truly ourselves, right? A bare part of ourselves, not like a projection, avatar, or performance, or a brand of ourselves. And that's why these, small interventions that the spa was made in were really meant to try to get to those spaces that had as least interference in our bodies, no projection of self there. Humming is kind of the biggest performance that you get, moving, dancing. But they're kind of timeless human traditions. And so, I don't know what technology will do also. I'm ignorant enough to say that and not know. And I would hope that we can still deliver on those. Because I think it's a real shame to start to avoid discomfort as people. Because that is, again, the edge of growth, the edge of ourselves, and especially discomfort with other people. Our world is becoming higher and higher conflict. We isolate ourselves more and more for ease, for comfort, But within that, are we making progress? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Part of it is encountering the other, is learning about the other. If the goal is symbiosis, it's not going to be a fluffy cloud, It'll be thunder and lightning, but it will be alive, And those are things that, again, I'm interested in.
I have a feeling that you living in New York, that, I lived there. I lived there myself for about 6 years, and it's a difficult city. It's such an uphill battle all the time, and a lot of it comes from being forced to interact with people all the time.
Yeah.
I don't live there anymore. I live in this suburban enclave north of Houston. It's like some weird bubble, and it's great.
How wonderful.
But I don't talk to anybody. I don't encounter people, and I'm definitely missing that humanity and that challenge. It's easy to say, you love everybody and everything's great when you don't talk to anybody and you don't see anybody. So I wonder, do you think that being in New York, because I know you went to Montreal for a bit and then you came back, has that kind of brought you back in touch with this idea of the importance of awkward moments? Because New York is just full of awkward moments.
Yeah, I constantly fail every day. Let's also say Montreal is an amazing place, and had I not been in there during the pandemic, I would have also had wonderful awkward moments. So,
right.
Yay, Montreal.
Yeah.
I think friction happens a lot in those spaces. There's environmental
Friction's
determinism
a good word for it.
that happens, maybe more than awkwardness, and that kind of friction. If we look at invention, invention is always full of friction, right? Full of tension either between collaborators or accidents, mishaps. Nothing is clean within that. And I think that, the narratives that we get today through social media, through the kind of films, all of the stories that are told, really, they still embrace, I believe, a notion of perfection, and the idea that it might all work out.
Yeah.
Well, it often doesn't, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something beautiful that comes from it.
Okay, I like that. That's an interesting form of optimism. It's like a realistic optimism. I like it. Okay, I have to ask about this whole prototyping sense thing with Centronics, right?
Yeah.
What? How did that work?
Yeah.
How did you, that you needed to be there. I'm assuming you went at some point to them and they'd start pumping stuff in the air. No? How did that work?
No. This presentation could be like 2 hours long.
Yeah,
and I'm doing
I bet,
it,
yeah.
honestly, like a disservice in some ways. But no, that was also all remote. Everybody was stuck in their countries, and they were in the Netherlands, in Utrecht,
Okay, right, you said
outside
that.
of
Okay.
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And so what we did is establish some emotional goals. If you've ever designed a scent, sense, tread, and emotion. So different molecules have cultural codes associated to them. So we started to define, what is the emotional environment and the emotional experience of each of these spaces, and what kind of scent profiles would elicit those emotions. And so I worked directly with Anahita Milnik, who's their director of business development, and she started to work with all of the noses. And the amazing part of their machine is that what they can do is they can rapid prototype quite quickly. So what they would do is make like 3 different compositions,
Yeah.
right? And mail them to all of us.
No way.
So I still have them. I wear them now as perfumes. I have like 36 different vials,
Oh my
and so we would smell them, and we would have these hilarious Google Meet sessions between like Dubai and LA and Los Angeles and Amsterdam at some ungodly weird hour that worked for everybody.
Yeah.
While someone's trying to, drink coffee and deal with their child while smelling, like, I think this is too metallic.
Oh my gosh.
And so we went through 4 rounds of revisions like that, further and further refining, just like you would any kind of
any design
visual
project.
design
Sure,
project, right?
yeah.
Like, here are 3 directions, which one feels better?
Wow.
Let's refine this, let's refine it again, let's refine
Just
it
the
again.
vocabulary for that's tricky, though, because
Yeah.
you have to come up with more of that floral thing. It's not roses. What is that? Was it that kind of a conversation? You're just kind of
Yeah.
looking for the right terms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, I have a fluency in that
You
from
do,
having
right.
worked in food,
Yeah.
and that just comes through taste.
Yeah.
But Anahita was really our guide there. And that's really important if you work in scent ever, is to have someone who can also be the translator.
Yeah.
Who can listen and hear actually what it is you're saying. And same thing, I think, with sound design, right?
Yeah.
Because they tread in the same territory,
Yeah,
right?
and it's better to, I guess, when I've worked with sound designers, it's better to not try to do their job, but to describe the emotion you're going
Yeah.
for and just let them guide you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to ask one more question. Let's see. Sense of taste. It was the one thing that was missing for kind of obvious reasons from this experience, but clearly you care about it. Is that why, I couldn't help but notice, you said you'd opened, was it 5 bars and restaurants?
Yeah.
Is that why you were drawn to like working in that field? Is because taste is such a hard thing to design at scale, to design an experience at scale. Is that like, is it always the most challenging of the senses?
Yeah, always. This had taste in it in the beginning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and operationally it was too difficult.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of curious. So what was the idea?
We had inhalable clouds at one point.
Inhalable clouds.
Yeah. You can
Like
like
a hookah
atomize.
kind of a thing?
That actually is where the vapor fountain came from. It was like, whoa, we can't really ingest it, so it'll be a fountain now. But
That's a cool idea, though.
yeah, you can atomize kind of any scent. So you can atomize a liquid that has molecules in it, right?
Nice, okay.
And then you can create this incredible perception of eating like a strawberry or a piece of pine tree because when you
Without
taste,
any- yeah, that's-
when you taste, it's based on your smell, right?
Sure.
If you all do that tonight at dinner, just plug your nose and
Yeah.
eat. I did that once at FITC with a lot of candy wrappers, and but it's a great trick, and every museum around the world, really struggles with food experience because it's a whole operational layer that is incredibly difficult to upkeep and maintain.
Yeah.
And also has like health and safety built around it. So it's the only one of our senses that is the most difficult.
Well, I hope
to
you're
implement.
able to do this vapor somewhere else. I want to do that. That sounds great.
Me too.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to make the Museum of Vapor, please call me.
It's a great
okay?
idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, please, round of applause for Emilie. And that's it, y'all. That's FITC. We did it back here in person, but also to everybody online, thank you so much. We can't see you, but trust me, we know you're there and we love you. Give us a shout out in the comments. Thank you so much again to our sponsors. One last time, y'all, I'm gonna run through them. Who's the first one on the list? Adobe, that's right. Let's kick it up with Adobe. Yeah, Imagix, Lovelow Design, Deanne, Porter, Quantius, Seneca College, Stash Media, Startwell, Humber College, The Combine, Jam 3, City of Toronto, Friends and Enemies, Oddbee, and Rodeo Effects, where the party is going to be in just a little bit, about 45 minutes or so. Thank those people if you see them. They really did make this all happen. And thank you all for being here and just being on and engaged. It's been really nice to meet all of you. I hope you'll get to chat with more of you. And that's it. See you later. See you at the next one. Oh.